excited to talk to him, one of the founding members of that band. He's got a memoir about the band out called Under a Rock. Debbie Harry pretty much defined what that band looked like, but Chris Stein defined what that band sounded like. And they sold tens of millions of records along the way. One of my big regrets was never having gotten to see Blondie when they were all together. And then about 20 years ago when they did that reunion thing, they did a surprise show. I was in New York for the VMAs, and they would have these industry shows every night in these clubs, and you had to get an invitation. They wouldn't tell you who the band was, and one night it was Blondie, and I was just beside myself. I was so happy. Because there are so many other bands I'm either too young to have seen. You know, I never saw Led Zeppelin or anything like that, but Blondie was one of those bands that I was just so happy to see. So Chris Stein, I'm going to be on the show in June. Still nailing that down. Excited to talk to him. Your Cleveland Guardians are in Denver tonight, hoping to wrap up that series against the Rockies with a win. They hammered them last night after that first game loss. 13-7 was the Cleveland win last night. 8:40. Hold on. 8:40 is your first pitch tonight. 8:10 is the pregame. Hammy and Rosie and the whole hee-haw gang. And then the Guardians come home for the weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday against the Nationals. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, hosting the Kansas City Royals before they go to Miami to play the Marlins. I was reading about, I don't know if anybody else on the show watches the program, Mayor of Kingstown. I'm sure I've talked about it before. It's over there on Paramount Plus. It's a Jeremy Renner show, where he's kind of like this fixer. It's a fictionalized version of a town that I think is supposed to be a stand-in for Detroit. I think they shoot it in Pittsburgh because when he was recovering, he said that the trips back and forth were too much for him. So he just stayed in Pittsburgh for 4 months. I think they shot it there. But everybody remembers what happened to Jeremy Renner. He got run over by that snowcat a couple of years ago.
Did they have to write? They had to write that into the show, like
I
an
don't
accident
think
for
so.
him or something.
I can't believe he was back to work so soon. I mean, the third season of this show premieres Sunday night, so they shot an entire season. Again, I don't know the particulars.
Wouldn't he be like in a cast or a crutches or a wheelchair or something?
Something. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they'll write it in, if they will. But he's been doing a lot of press for it and talking about how, like, you know, I was working too hard on this show in this season. I was working too many hours. I was working too many days in a row. I was, like, falling asleep, you know. It's like I was technically still recovering. I wanted to get back to work. I mean, this was just January of last year that this happened. He's up there in the mountains. This snowplow runs him over, like a 14,000-pound snowplow. And he broke 40 bones, and he collapsed his lung. This dude was in bad shape. I mean, there were people that didn't think Jeremy Renner was going to live. But this Mayor of Kingstown is a great show. It's very entertaining. And it premieres Sunday. And I think they started shooting it in January. So they shot it pretty quickly. I don't know if they shot around him or what until, you know, he showed up. But he was like, I was falling asleep. And he's talked about how he understands that technically he's going to be in recovery for the rest of his life. Because he's like, initially they told me I'd never walk again. But, you know, and again, Jeremy Renner seems to have come to maybe some new conclusions about life, because the rap on this dude was that he was a real prick, that he thought he should have been a much bigger deal than he was, that he was like kind of mad that he was the lamest Avenger. He was not good to the women in his life.
He took the role.
Anybody would.
Well, of course, anybody would.
But, like, you know you're going to be the lamest Avenger. So, like, you had a great Disney Plus show. You had one of the best Disney Plus shows.
It was better than it needed to be.
Yeah.
And so it seems like maybe he's kind of come to some different conclusions that a near-death experience would probably give anyone. But he's like, you know, I'm never going to be like I was before this accident. But, I'm just trying to get healthier every day. The thing that jumped out at me, though, that I thought was very interesting is that in the midst of all this other stuff, he developed a photographic memory, which obviously is very useful.
Are you telling me that he got injured and developed a more powerful
brain?
Brain?
That's what he said.
Yeah. So he's an X-Men, or he's a real superhero now.
Well,
he's more interesting now than Hawkeye.
Yeah. He said one of my eyes came out of my head, and he said, and I've ended up with better vision in that eye than the other eye.
Well, I fixed it all.
Got all the dirt off the back of it.
I was slowing it down.
Yeah.
He just blew on the cartridge and put it back in. But I mean, if you're an actor that's got to memorize dialogue, imagine having a photographic memory. So, yeah, out of all the other stuff, that would be pretty cool. I'd love to have a photographic memory. My memory's so bad or I should say my memory only operates with the dumbest crap. I don't know what locks in my brain and what doesn't. But if I could have a photographic memory. What does Mary Lou Henner have? You know who Mary Lou Henner is?
No.
Look at this photograph.
She was Elaine on Taxi in the 70s. She's done things since then, but I mean, she's a pretty prolific actress. She's a Chicago girl, so she would, she was always doing theater as a younger actress. She was in movies and television shows and blah, blah, blah. But she has something called, she remembers every day of her life since she was 11.
That's too much.
That's too much.
They did a thing on 60 Minutes on her 15 years ago where she has a superior autobiographical memory. And she's like, it's not like I remember every single moment. But she goes, but if somebody said to me, what were you doing or what day of the week was January 11th, 1979, I would be able to tell you.
What's the point of that?
She said her mind is like having a movie running. So she's not remembering. It's called hyperthymesia is what she has. So she's like, on the one hand, you can close your eyes and they'll go, when they do these tests, you can close your eyes and they'll go, okay, what are we wearing? And she goes, and I won't be able to tell you. But if somebody goes, what happened? What were you doing on April the 12th, 1987? She's like, I will be able to tell you. I'm like, that's wild. Crazy.
I want that, because then you can't block out the bad stuff.
Block out the bad stuff. I mean, most people, it doesn't sound like most people are blocking out the bad stuff. I'd rather take the other stuff, I'd rather take all of it. Yeah. But I don't know if she got hit in the head or I don't know.
She got run over by a tractor too?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know if she has had this her whole life.
Well,
sounds like since she was 11.
When they say that, when they're like, you only use 10% of your brain and then you have some kind of a crazy, injury that unlocks the other 40% of it. And then you're like,
wait,
wow,
what?
look at this.
You're the math person.
What unlocks another 40% of it?
I thought you said the other 40%.
Oh,
yeah.
I might have.
Also, the
meant
10% thing is
I think that's
true.
debunked.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, you're not using 100% of it.
Right.
So there's so much going on. There's so much potential in there that nobody gets to.
Yeah, even if the 10% is wrong, if I'm not using 100%, who cares?
Right.
How much of our brain do we use?
So, yeah, anytime you see, because Mary Lou, I remember my mom used to buy Mary Lou Henner books because before this whole thing got, I guess, more public, she was writing all these books about health books, like cut sugar out of your life and all that kind of stuff. She was really early on that. And she's in good shape. She's like 72 years old, so looks good. But this memory thing, that's fascinating to me. If somebody was like, hey, Mary, what happened on March the 3rd, 1992? And you go,
3 years old.
Right. And you'd be able to tell her.
No,
Yeah,
after age 11.
Have my hand in my diapers or whatever, I don't know. But if you have to memorize, I don't know if it works for her memorizing dialogue, but Renner, now he's got that photographic memory.
More of an auditory learner myself, where if I hear something over and over again, it's more likely for me to remember it than if I were to read it.
Same.
Well, I mean, my wife is always listening to books. I can't listen to books. I have to read them.
I've never tried to listen to a book.
Yeah.
But if I have to memorize something.
Listens to so many books.
Go ahead.
No. Just she's plowing through books because she listens to them.
If I have to memorize lines or something like that, I will record myself saying them, like reading them, and then just play it over and over and over again until it sticks. Because if I just read it over and over again, it'll never stay in my mind.
I mean, in a situation like that, it might be better to listen to yourself because you kind of know where the beats and the inflections are. But
I mean, with anything.
Oh, like if you're. Oh, I see.
Like if I say, like if I'm trying to, back in the day when we tried to memorize phone numbers, it would be that thing where I'd say it out loud a bunch of times, and then it would store in my brain. But if I just looked at it, nothing. Or if I recite things a bunch of times.
Yeah, but when you
lock in.
Using a phone number as an example, when you look at a phone number, even if you're not saying it out loud, you're kind of counting it in your head, yeah?
But that's not the same as physically saying it.
Yeah. Saying it out loud is what you
saying
need to
it
do.
So I can hear it is what
I see.
Is what locks
then
it in
it makes
there.
it real.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think that so I don't know what the condition of Jeremy Renner is, but that Mayor of Kingstown is a real good show. He's
pretty
getting
good.
better. Yeah.
Considering, as far as people I know run over by a tractor, he's doing really well.
Probably the best.
Yeah.
Out of all the people I've ever known who've been run over by a tractor, he's taken the top spot. They're still trying to get people to not pay too close attention to the AI-enhanced search that Google has incorporated.
It's so bad.
It's annoying.
Well, I like how they paid like $1 billion to Reddit, right? They go, well, we're incorporating Reddit's knowledge base. I'm like, boy, that's a fancy way to describe a huge pool of edgelords. The knowledge base at Reddit? No wonder you're having problems. One lady did make the glue pizza, though, because Google AI was telling people to use glue if the cheese. What do I do if the cheese is sliding off my pizza? It said use glue. And one lady used.
Elmer's is edible.
She made the glue pizza, and she's like, oh, cheese didn't slide off. Elmer's is edible?
I mean, it's non-toxic.
Well, those are two different things.
Yeah, but like you can eat it, and it's not going to make you sick, so you can.
Well,
put
they
it on
had to
pizza.
because friggin' kids is sticking it in their mouth.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're all being used as guinea pigs for this, and I would think that anybody.
This is Bing's chance.
Yeah.
To take over.
Well, Bing was on this first, really.
Oh.
Bing got the AI thing first, but
they use 4chan.
People
the knowledge base from 4chan.
Yeah, people had already written Bing off so much that I don't even think it resonated. And so there were examples of questions people were typing into Google to see what the AI would kick back. Somebody wrote, "Are parachutes effective?" And by the way, for people who use a lot of Google search, you can turn this off. You can just get, web results. Because this, as it is now, this AI is only going to make search worse. The response the person got about the effectiveness of parachutes was, the answer was, parachutes are no more effective than backpacks at preventing death or major injury when jumping from an airplane.
Well, that's not true.
So there you go. Nobody said they're perfect. How does Sandy Cheeks die? You know that character from SpongeBob? Sandy Cheeks dies by suicide from a drug overdose, including cocaine, heroin, and alcohol.
Perfect. Love that.
Sandy was found unconscious with cuts on her arms and shoulders and cocaine nearby.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Lost SpongeBob episode.
There's a reason she moved underwater, trying to escape her demons, but couldn't get away.
In that giant fishbowl. Do Funyuns outsell responsibility yuns?
I know we're not talking about SpongeBob, but it came up. Did you guys, I heard recently that SpongeBob was based on the 7 deadly sins. Have you guys ever heard that?
That Steven Hillenburg wrote it as that?
Each character represents a different deadly sin. And, like, that is one of, like, the underlying teachings of SpongeBob. That, like, Mr. Krabs is greed. Plankton is envy. Patrick is sloth.
That sounds like a coincidence that somebody put together.
Dude, but when you think about it, like, all
it
seven
fits.
of them,
You could make it fit.
They're all represented there. Pride is Sandy.
What is SpongeBob?
I don't remember.
Lust.
Gluttony is Gary because he's hungry all the time.
SpongeBob's lust.
Is he lust? He lusts after
excessive
Squidward.
love for all things.
Yeah.
Plankton is greed, Mr. Krabs. Envy, Plankton. Sloth is Gary. Pride is Sandy.
Wait, Sloth is Gary or?
Sloth is Gary.
Sloth is Gary and
He's a
Patrick
snail.
is Gluttony. Yeah, I had them mixed up.
Squidward is wrath. And SpongeBob is lust.
Isn't that crazy to think about? When I was like, oh man, that's like we were talking yesterday about what's too much of a coincidence. That fits too perfectly for it to not.
I don't
have
think
been
it fits
that
as
way.
perfectly as you think. Like,
think about all of every episode. They
but
play
I'm thinking
into that.
of SpongeBob being lust in. I mean, okay.
Not
maybe.
lust in a sexual sense.
I understand.
But you can lust after
I
things and
get
people and ideas and.
I think it's an interesting theory. I doubt that was in any way part of the creation of those characters.
You have no idea, though.
No,
I
don't.
Guy religious?
I really don't.
Or used to be religious or raised religious? I mean, like, I don't know the religious background of the creator of SpongeBob.
Well, we can't ask him because he's dead.
And now he's dead. So now what?
I don't know. He's in the great beyond.
Just saying. Something to think about.
Is it?
Guys, all I'm saying is start connecting dots. That's it.
I'm pretty sure I'm done thinking about this.
Well, he was
connecting dots.
He was a marine biology professor.
Aha!
And he wrote and illustrated a book about animals, about marine animals that he used to educate the students. And then he left to pursue a career in animation. And he began developing his picture book into SpongeBob shorts.
Well, maybe he had some demons of his own that he had to get out on paper.
Yeah, maybe he did. Maybe he did. I don't know. I don't see anything in here about his religious affiliation. But, yeah, okay.
Maybe one of his reference books was the Good Old Book.
I mean, maybe you're on to
You
something.
call it the Good Little Book?
Good Old Book.
Okay.
Why can't? Am I slurring my words today?
It sounded like you said Good Little Book.
I mean, it could be a good little book if you get one of the little pocket-sized ones.
Mm-hmm.
He died of Lou Gehrig's disease.
Sloth?
Sloth.
You know, one of those deadly sins that.
Yeah.
Lou Gehrig had?
Mm-hmm. I don't know anything about Lou Gehrig either. He might have been full of lust. Steven Hillenburg died 2018. He was 57 years old. But I don't know. It is an interesting, when you break it out like that is interesting.
Because then you start to see it, you know? Now you got to go back. And
Well, you can-
now that your eyes are open.
Yeah, now that your eyes are, I'd wager you can see anything if it's kind of put that way, but that's different than people saying, oh, this is how it was created. And no, it's interesting, yeah. I don't even know if that show is still in production. Do they still make SpongeBob's?
I thought
I don't know.
I think they
I feel like every time I think it's canceled, I go,
years of
no,
it,
it's still
yeah.
on, yeah. I've got to take